What up, Coordination? On the pod today, we got Alain from Encointer. We are going to be talking about local community currencies on the podcast. Encointer has two pilots, one going on in Zurich and another one going on in Rwanda, in which they're doing community currencies on the order of 200 members in the Zurich pilot. And there's a lot of interesting things happening here. Actual data about how this stuff is being used on Sybil Resistance, on the economics, on user experience. And we dive in and pull all of those threads on this episode. So I think that I'm really bullish on community currencies. I think that there's a beautiful opportunity for community currencies to create little pockets of value that are oriented around local values instead of global values that come from global commodified currencies like the USD or the Euro or Bitcoin. I think that with global currencies, you kind of get this race to the bottom of the brainstem of things that everyone in the world likes, things like pizza and beer, and not everyone in the world likes these things, but they're an example of like a globally commodified thing. And so what if we could create local community currencies around local values, whatever your local town values, or maybe whatever your local internet community values if you index on locality of the meme space instead of physical space. So local community currencies, I think, is a theme that you'll see on the Green Pill podcast over the next couple quarters, and Encointer is doing it. So really, really fun episode with Alain, and I think you're going to enjoy it as well. Without further ado, I give you the Encointer team.
The GLOW dollar is a new stablecoin with a very special property. As the market cap of GLOW goes up, extreme poverty goes down. GLOW is a dollar-backed, non-profit stablecoin that creates basic income for people living in extreme poverty. GLOW is basically the same business model as USDC, with yield-generating treasuries on one side and a stablecoin on Ethereum on the other. But instead of being a for-profit company, GLOW is a non-profit that donates 100% of all yields from the GLOW Reserve to GiveDirectly's basic income program. GiveDirectly is a charity that gives people money, no strings attached, to people living in poverty, and is a charity that Vitalik has previously donated to and supported in the past. With GLOW, you can reduce poverty just by holding a stablecoin. GLOW is launching in early 2023, and you can join the waitlist at glowdollar.org/greenpill. That's glodollar.org/greenpill. Working in Web3 is awesome, but working outside of the typical W-2 employee structure is a deal breaker for so many. OPOLIS is helping the self-sovereign worker focus on what they do best: their work. Tax time is coming up. OPOLIS helps professionalize your business by helping you form an entity, generate proof of employment through pay stubs, and receive a W-2 at the end of the tax year. Are you self-employed and forced to spend money on expensive healthcare insurance with limited coverage? OPOLIS leverages group buying power through a community employment co-op, helping you save 20 to 50% on high-quality, affordable healthcare options through Cigna. And finally, OPOLIS's member owners share in OPOLIS's success and profits based on their work token holdings. You must be authorized to work inside the United States in select Canadian provinces to receive OPOLIS's benefits. Book a 30-minute free consultation with OPOLIS's experts and join OPOLIS by March 31st, 2023 to get 1,000 work and 1,000 bank tokens. Go to connect.opolis.co/bankless to get started. And if you're going to East Denver, make sure to stop by the OPOLIS booth or attend their Future of Work Summit hosted by OPOLIS.
What's up, Alain? Let's dive into Encointer. So tell us about the why, what, how of how it works.
Yeah, so Encointer is about lowering inequality in the world. So big vision of it. And the way it does this is by issuing a basic income in local community currencies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, in a way, it's kind of a culmination of what I observed in crypto, what was happening that made me think about how money works and why it tends to accumulate capital on very few people, and how we could do it differently.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's dig a little bit deeper. How does it work, and how does it change that problem?
So if we want to issue a basic income, we want to make sure that two things: the basic income needs to have value, real value that people can use, but also we need to be sure that each person only gets that income once. So that's the Sybil resistance that we need. And I think the key contribution of Encointer is how it solves the Sybil attack, and that's by physical concurrent key signing meetups. So if you want that basic income, you need to join a community, and it's a local community. So maybe we can talk later about why it is important that these are local. So you need to be at a certain place at a certain time every 10 days currently, in your neighborhood. So you never have to go really far, but you need to meet a random bunch of people, and then you just attest each other's personhood. You attest each other's attendance of that key signing meetup. And because all the meetups happen at the same time, you cannot attend 2 meetups. So that's really leveraging the physics of each person can only be in one place at one time. And that's how we solve the Sybil attack.
Got it. Yeah, I know that Sybil attacks are a big topic on this podcast just because one human, one vote systems are way more democratic than one token, one vote systems. And I think that we learned in our Brian Ford episode that there's 4 ways of creating Sybil resistance. There's KYC, nation state, government IDs, there's biometric, there's web of trust, and there's presence based. So it seems like you at least have some element of presence based and maybe web of trust in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
Well, web of trust does play a minor role, but really it is a presence-based protocol. Why is it also why does it have to do with web of trust as well? So if you want to join the community, we always need to make sure that the majority is honest. That's just the basic assumption of our protocol. The majority can always bend the rules. So we rely on majority is honest, and that means we somehow need to limit how many people can join a new community per cycle of proof of personhood, so per ceremony. And that's where we use web of trust, or kind of the social graph, because we let people invite other people to join the protocol.
Right.
It's kind
So
of a
that's how you
pre-step of proof of personhood or of Sybil resistance.
Yeah.
Others need that as well.
Yeah. So I mean, about how many people have been onboarded so far?
So so far we have 2 communities, one in Zurich, one in Kigali, Rwanda, and in Zurich we have right now we have 200 reputables. That means 200 people who have attended at least once during the last 5 cycles. And that's kind of the constant population that we have now. That may seem little, but it's just one city, and we started in May. And as it can only grow by 1/3 per cycle, it's just it can really only grow organically because of our trust assumptions. Exponential over time, but yeah, well, we are still in the early days.
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to prove it out on a small scale first, and only then kind of blow it up to web scale. So I'm curious if you could talk about the proof points that you have so far, and how's the first population doing?
So the population in Zurich is our pioneer community, and I think it has evolved pretty decently. So we had, especially also in terms of who we could onboard and how people are using it. So I would say our population is not dominated by crypto fans. So a lot
Yeah.
of the people that participate don't care about crypto at all, but they care about the local identity. They care about basic income, and about the whole story. So as I said, we started in March and we had a first acceptance point. So what we issue, the basic income, we haven't talked about this so far, is a currency called
Hmm.
LOI, which in Zurich is at par with the Swiss franc, but that's just kind of a social agreement with the acceptance points. So we started with one
Hmm.
acceptance point. That's a popular cafe close to my office. And they were really fond of the vision, and they said, hey, you know what, we will accept LOI from day one. And that's how we
Hmm.
started. So people got a basic income, and then they could go over to the coffee and spend it on coffee. So we started with 22 LOI, which is 22 Swiss francs in buying power. This would buy you 5 coffees or something like
Hmm.
that. And then we went on from there. So we started with 10 people. We call them the bootstrappers, doing kind of a secure setup, a trusted setup of the community.
Hmm.
And then we onboarded more people, more and more, like one third additional participants each time.
Hmm.
And we had a few technical hiccups in the beginning, of course, but overall it worked really smoothly. Paying process was nice at the cafe. Pretty soon we had a little grocery store with local products that accepted LOI as well. Now we also have a little pop-up store. We have a someone who sells his honey in LOI. We have an artist who sells his stuff. And I
Hmm.
think one of the bigger events was an open air happening in Zurich, where you could buy drinks LOI, and where we also distributed vouchers, kind of welcome vouchers to start using.
Got it.
And I mean, yeah, talking about communities, I'm really proud to say we have now a second community which started in Kigali. They started with
Hmm.
a slightly different concept, a little bit less formal. So they start with person-to-person trades first. They don't
Hmm.
yet have kind of constant acceptance points, but it is an important milestone for me, because I mean, bringing more money to Zurich is kind of not the point of Encointer, right? So it's not our vision. I mean, if we can, further local um, consumption of local goods in Zurich, that's a good thing. It's a good thing for the environment as well. But our vision is really to kind of bring equal opportunity in terms of, like, yeah, financial inclusion, in terms of yeah, pure buying power in the communities. So having now a pilot in Kigali is really rewarding for us, and we're really curious how we'll use it there,
Yeah.
what the impact will be.
Yeah, I wonder if you can say more about the pilot, like any anecdotes that you've heard from the people who are in the pilot. What are the conditions on the ground and how have they changed? Just really pinching and zooming on that pilot is really interesting to me, because if you do bring this to web scale, that's what more people are going to experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, we have, I think, the interesting insights. I mean, of course, the technical bumps can be fun to tell as well, but I think it's more interesting to talk about how people perceive it. And you know, the first people who got a basic income and went to the coffee and drank their coffee, they
Hmm.
told me, somehow I feel bad about drinking this coffee, because I
Hmm.
feel like this cafe just gave me this coffee for free. And I told them, well, it's not for free at all.
Mhm.
They get money for it, and if we establish a circular economy, that's just how they make their turnover, and
Mhm.
you just have a right in our community for a basic income. That's your right as part of that community. And but it's bending people's minds, the idea of basic income, and that's what I really like here. That we can experiment with basic income without a political process, because political processes are so slow. I just don't have the patience for that.
Mhm. Right. So, I mean, it seems like it sort of gives a replicable model that kind of goes around bureaucracy in these local jurisdictions to these communities.
Yes, well, it's. I mean, there are a lot of challenges, but it's challenges of community building, community growth. How can you motivate people to attend regularly? Um, how can you convince store acceptance points, stores to accept that currency? That's a lot of work, and that's what doesn't scale. Just like, if we want to take this to global scale, um, I think the pilot can do a lot of good in just showing that it works, and that's why we invest
Mhm.
a lot of money and effort now into this pilot, to just show that it basically can work. um, but then we really need just more communities, and we need people on the ground that take the initiative, and that's why it might not be kind of the protocol which has the steepest curve of growth. um, but if I may compare it to other proof of personhood approaches, I just think it's a very secure approach to Sybil resistance, because physical presence is just a lot stronger than web of trust, or than kind of AI hard challenges to solve, and like, yeah,
Mhm.
biometrics has its other uh, drawbacks with respect to privacy, and yeah, well, we
Yeah.
don't need to
Yeah.
get,
The,
to get into
we
that,
get.
but
I hear you, and that's a whole nother episode, which should be taken seriously. But given that you're not doing much biometrics on
not
this
at all,
project, I'm not going to
not
go
at
into it.
all.
So I guess like I'm I'm a big believer in local currencies because I like the idea that we can create local pockets of values around um local values. And I'm not just talking about like geographic local, but like interest based. Like, I could have like a keto DAO that just like really values that type of diet. We could have a public goods DAO that really values public goods. And this allows us to create these little safe havens away from US dollars and Bitcoin, which are like just race to the bottom of the brainstem kind of global commodified currencies. Beer and sex and like pizza are like, I think like the ultimate embodiment of capitalism's values. And so I guess like I'm really a believer in local currencies because I like the idea that we can have these little local currencies with their own GDP that have real value. But I guess like one of the things that when I explain local currencies to people, they have a question of is like, how can a community currency be issued out of nothing, quote unquote, and have real value? So I don't know. I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about the local currency design space there.
Yeah, very interesting. So, I mean, there have been a lot of local currency initiatives before us, of course, and they usually are initiatives from a community that issues their own money but pegs it to the national currency. So that's really the most common way how people do it. Um,
Mhm.
but that also means that the local currencies do nothing to lower inequality. Because you need national currency to buy the local currency, and then you can kind of show local identity by spending the local currency, and that gives identity, gives kind of a status in your community, and that does fine. So the experience from others is really that it can further local economy. It can further social capital in the community. But I think it's really the basic income aspect of it, which goes into the direction of really lowering inequality. But your point is absolutely crucial. If we issue a basic income, who pays for it, or why does it have value? Because there is no central bank that issues the law here in Zurich. So no one backs this currency with gold or with Swiss francs. But we do back it by social contracts. So the acceptance point that we have. So it's more like basically in theory there are, I guess, two approaches. You can peg your currency to a basket of goods. For example, the baker could say you can always have a loaf of bread for that amount of that currency, and then the butcher says you will always get that amount of meat, and so on. And that would give real value to that local currency because you can go to those stores who make a commitment and get something for it. So it does have real value. This is a rather complicated approach. So we first wanted to try to kind of have the loi at par with the national currency because we need to explain less concepts to the community. And therefore, it is really the acceptance points that maintain this peg. As long as they accept the peg of one loi is 1 Swiss franc, when they accept the currency, that's the real value that the currency will have.
Got it. So it seems like there's kind of this virtuous cycle between the social contract and people actually using the currency. It almost feels like network effects to me, where the more people use the currency, the more people accept it as legitimate, then the more people use the currency, and it kind of spins from there. I don't know if I'm saying back to you exactly in the words what you said to me, but that's kind of how I interpret it. Is that close at all?
Absolutely, yeah. But I mean, we should keep in mind that this only works if we can establish a circular economy, because if our acceptance point accepts the currency, but the currency will always stay there, it will just stack up, and that is not in the interest of the acceptance point. Because what we should mention here is, like other local currencies do, Encointer has built into its money design a concept called demurrage. So the local currency loses its face value over time. And that is an important concept to understand, because if so, the devaluation also continues when the money is at the acceptance point. So if you have money in your pocket that loses value over time, you want to spend it as quickly as possible, because today you can get more for it than tomorrow. And that's exactly why local community currencies work. It's because they yield a higher money velocity, so you can do more turnaround with the same amount of money. But that also means that the acceptance point doesn't want to keep the hot potato in his hands for very long, so they want to get rid of it. So they should be able to pay their suppliers or maybe their staff in that currency, such that the currency can circulate the whole time. And just, well, if I may put that side note, we talked about the basic income and why and who pays for it. Actually, it is this demurrage which basically pays for the basic income. So because we burn money exponentially in your wallet, we burn the money where it is not used, and we distribute it to all the humans in this community. So it's, in a way, it is the demurrage that pays for the basic income. And by doing so, it also makes sure that the money supply will be in proportion to the population. So it's not kind of an inflationary design that with each basic income that is issued, the money supply will just raise forever. But because we have demurrage, there will be an equilibrium which is proportional to the population.
Mm-hmm. And just for listeners who aren't super familiar with demurrage, what's the simplest way of explaining that?
It's so if today you have 10 loi in your wallet, the loi has a halving time of a year. So that means if you just do nothing, today in your wallet you see a balance of 10. If you wait for a year, you will see a balance of 5. And it will still be 5 Swiss francs buying power, most likely, where it was 10 Swiss francs buying power a year ago. So it's exponential decay in your wallet.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think the analogy that I think that I learned about demurrage with was like rice, or basically like where if you have 100 units of rice and you expect that a certain amount of them are going to spoil on a weekly basis, then you have 99 after if 1% spoil on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
So that's like my analogy in my head for demurrage.
That's actually where the word comes from, because if you are a trader of fresh goods, you need to account for all the rotten produce that you that you have over time. And I really like this analogy, because money is, well, one of the only things in the world that we have in our lives that is not perishable. Everything else is perishable. And yeah, why not money?
I guess I'm curious. I have in my notes here that y'all have launched a pioneer community with 200 members in Zurich, and there's a launch that just happened in Rwanda in November 10th. It's obviously very early. We're recording this November 29th. It's very early to ask this question, but do you see any similarities or differences in these two very different geographies?
Well, it is really early to ask. I mean,
Yeah.
we have talked to the leader in Kigali about how we approach, how we tell the story, and the story is definitely different.
Just a note for the listeners: Kigali is in Rwanda. That's the second pilot there. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah. So, well, I think it's harder there also because of legislation. So we shouldn't forget that, well, if you're in different jurisdictions, it will be very different how governments will receive such local community currencies. Although I mean, I have to say, a crypto ban usually is motivated by governments who don't want capital to flee the country, and you cannot do that with a local currency. So I don't really think we need to be careful in how we compare there. But definitely jurisdiction and kind of talking to the government is really important for our leader in Rwanda, because I mean, he's taking risks because of this legal uncertainty there, and that's why that community starts, I would say, really as a low-key experiment, and not kind of, not with waving flags and calling the revolution. It's not how things will be approached there. In Zurich, we can act differently. We can be more bold on our ambitions, and our greatest fear is how the tax officials will act on it, and so that's just a different level of we don't need to fear to go to prison,
Right.
But
Got it.
yeah, but apart from that, really, I cannot tell how different people will use their local currencies, and we want to give as much freedom as possible. So we support the community as the Encointer Association. We have a little bit of means to support the new communities, and we do so as unconditionally as possible because we think they know best how they need to allocate the funds, and we don't want to mess too much with how they do it and how the money has to work for them. So I think
Hmm.
we just supply the protocol, we supply technical support, and kind of a minimum starting funds, and then we hope that people just are motivated enough, take the initiative, and do something which works for them.
Beautiful. Well, I can't wait to have you back in a couple years and just see how the experiments have grown, and you'll probably have a lot more data points at that point. So, the traction is
Absolutely.
interesting so far. And uh, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to say?
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe I can just tell about our next steps towards our vision. So I think we have two more big topics apart from adoption, and one is
Hmm.
democracy. So as we have a Sybil Resistance in place, we want to establish one person, one vote subsidiary democracy, which means that every decision should be taken at the lowest possible level. So our first vote, as an example, will probably be how high should the basic income be in our community, and then we let people vote on that, which I think is a pretty interesting question to ask, and it's kind of the fear of every central banker to
Hmm.
submit this to a democratic process. But I think it will be an interesting experiment, and we are concluding the minimum viable product to really have kind of on-chain democracy doing that. So that's
Hmm.
one thing. And the other is privacy. So right now we are a substrate-based protocol running on Polkadot, well, Kusama to be precise, and everything is transparent. And so this is an issue because local currencies are used for everyday purchases, and you have to register for these cycles to prove your personhood. That means you commit to be in a certain place at a certain time in advance. And that's kind of an added risk. It's a security risk, but also it really leaks even future behavior about yourself. And that's why we take privacy seriously. And we are now working on a second layer solution, which not only helps us with scalability, so that kind of each community can scale independently of others, but also helps with privacy, because these second layers will run with trusted execution environments. I don't want to go too deep into tech here, but it's just one of the options to provide privacy to transactions.
Hmm. Got it. So that's what's on the roadmap next. More focuses on democracy and privacy.
Yeah, that's especially the technical roadmap. Yeah. But I think
Yeah.
more important than tech is really community work and adoption, because in the end this will decide uh, if we get to fly or not.
Yeah. Bird, well, thanks so much for coming on the pod. How can people find you and the project?
Well, the best place to start really is encointer.org.
Hmm.
That's where you can start. You can download the app in well for your mobile phone. Start playing around. We have a test net. We have tutorials for people who want to start a local community where they live. And please just reach out to us.
Great. We'll put some links in the show notes for that. And thanks again for coming on the pod.
Thanks for having me.